Thanks for joining us here today. This is our webinar on Zoho Books, Overview and Best Practices. If you don't know, we do these webinars every single month. So at the end of every month, basically the last Tuesday of every month, we're going to do a webinar on a new Zoho product, Overview and Best Practices. I think we're actually going to start doing some more deep dive webinars that will kind of complement some of the other webinars we did kind of coming up as well. Look for that probably the first of next year. And as we go through the webinar today, I said this earlier, but if you weren't on, please use the Q&A box for any questions you may have. We'll answer them at the end of the webinar. We're going to go through all of your questions, and we'll probably answer some in real time as we go along as well. And with that, we will get going. So today we're going to cover quite a bit. We're going to go over what is Zoho Books, kind of give you an overview of how to get around in Zoho Books, and then we're going to do kind of best practices and uses. So there's a lot in Zoho Books, so we're going to try to cover here are the things that most people need to use on a daily basis just to get it set up, to get going, to kind of understand, out of the box before they can actually start doing something. And then we'll go into a Q&A after that. So with that, Tyler, take it away. What is Zoho Books?
Yeah, so Zoho Books is a cloud accounting software. So if you're familiar with Xero or QuickBooks, right, it's in that same vein of products. In essence, it'll allow you to, automate accounting processes and accounting-based reporting, right? So your P&L statements, right, balance sheets, all those types of key reports, as well as, some more specific ones like your quick ratio and, being able to just report on any of those accounting metrics. You're able to send out digital estimates and quotes out to your clients. They actually come out, with an email template and digital functionality to approve them, which then notifies you they've been approved. At that point, you're able to work with those estimates and actually convert them and create sales orders, invoices, and purchase orders, basically to then, fulfill the order, bill for it, and then purchase any products that you need to, on the tail end. You're also able to handle any online payments through those invoices that get sent out. So Zoho integrates with all the big payment processors, Authorize.net, Square, Stripe, really all of the key ones, as well as many, many others. But those are kind of the ones that we see most often. And then last but not least, it's kind of a nice central hub to integrate with, the rest of the Zoho applications, right? So, oftentimes you're going to be integrating this with, the CRM. You can integrate this. It kind of is a home base for things like subscriptions or, any inventory management. So it really becomes kind of your central hub for all things accounting and payment based.
So with that, let's go into the Zoho Books overview.
Yeah, so we'll kind of walk through a lot of the key areas in Zoho Books that you'd be working with on a day-to-day basis here, starting with the dashboard. So it's kind of your home base. You get a quick top-down view of, basically everything going on inside of Books, right? So you can track any open receivables or payables, right? So this would be an open invoice, an overdue invoice, kind of rolling up into these KPIs at the top. And then based on your payments against those invoices, you can actually track your cash flow over time. This will actually keep an accurate count of your cash balance, assuming that you have all of your banking feeds set up, which Brett will kind of jump into a little bit later. Then kind of running down the side here, one of the things that you'll definitely need to do is add all of your items. So if we go ahead and, add an item here, we'll touch on some of the things that you can track about those items. So, each item can be defined as either a good or a service. So you are actually able to sell, for example, like, hours of work as a specific type of item. Each one will get a unique SKU and a measurement of the unit. So if we're selling widgets, the unit might be pieces. You could track the unit as like boxes or, feet if you're selling something that, you roll out and cut. And then for each of these, you'll give it a selling price and a cost price, and then map in your proper account that you would like that to go into. One thing to keep in mind there is that you can have multiple different sales or income accounts, right? So if you have different products, maybe you account for products versus services differently, you can actually assign those to that specific GL code or chart of accounts entry. Kind of moving down the side, we'll talk a little bit about some of these sales parameters. So, we can't do sales without having a customer. So this will kind of give you your full list here of all customers, both active and inactive. If we go ahead and open up one of those customers, we'll basically see kind of a breakdown of what is on file for them. right? So you can have multiple contacts at a specific customer or company record. You can track their billing and shipping addresses. And again, you can have multiple of those for one specific customer. And then, it'll kind of give you a quick view of if you have any outstanding receivables and your overall kind of sales over time to this person. From this page, you can also actually spin up an estimate or a sales order or invoice, any of those kind of key records that you might want to send their way. And so we'll kind of walk through real quick here. We'll circle around and touch on this a little bit more later, but these kind of key items in the sales process. Right, so you're going to be working with estimates, which are kind of a quick way to send out a quote to someone that they can either approve or reject. Again, that happens digitally, and you can be notified of it, back to the CRM once that happens. Kind of continuing on, once you get an accepted estimate, you can go ahead and convert that estimate into a sales order. The sales order kind of serves as the link between the billing and the purchasing side of the process. Right, so from the sales order, you can create a purchase order, and from the sales order, you can create an invoice to actually get paid. So that kind of becomes the hub that connects kind of both sides of the process all in one module. And continuing down the page, of course, we need to be able to send out invoices. These don't have to be created from the sales order, right? So you can just go ahead and create an invoice as a standalone item and send it out. These can be, you can allow partial payments or not allow partial payments. But at the end of the day, kind of the general process is you send this out with a due date and then, get paid or get notified that it's become overdue. And then last but not least, for kind of some of the core areas of the sales section, right, we'll need to be able to track payments that we've received, right? So these payments can be processed via, PayPal's, credit cards, or, ACH transfers. Right, all of those can run digitally. ACH will have to plug in. I think it's called Plaid in order to allow that. Then last but not least, you can, of course, kind of record payment against them manually. So if you do get a check, you don't need to have digital payment. You can, record it offline. Then moving into a quick review of some of the items here in purchases, you'll need to have some vendors in the system. So these would be, any people that you purchase products from. Could either be, unfinished goods that you're going to create, bundles or composites with, or actually, your finished items coming from these vendors. And then kind of the key module here for managing your purchases of any of these items are going to be purchase orders. So you can basically create a purchase order, again, either from a sales order or independently, send it out to your vendor, and then mark that you've received the item, and then bill for that purchase order to mark that it's been paid out to the vendor. There is, again, and Brett will dig into this a little bit more later, but we do have a full section around kind of accounting tracking, right? So this would be your chart of accounts, your bank feeds, all those kind of key things that you really would only want your accountant working with, right? So, most of your people working in Zoho Books probably don't need permissions for this section. Really only your accountant would need this, but you're able to, customize your chart of accounts in here. Though it does come with the standard kind of set of accountants and account names, you can build on top of this and customize it as needed, based on the specific accounts that you use. And then lastly here, it kind of comes out of the box with a full suite of reports, right? So anything from your kind of basic, profit loss, cash flow statements to, getting sales breakdown by items, tracking the different payments that you've received or any receivables that might be open still. I will highlight as well, if you are on Zoho One or have a license for Zoho Analytics, you can really build on top of these in a really cool way. So these kind of give you a baseline set of reports to work with, but again, you can really go crazy by pulling this over to Zoho Analytics. And then lastly here, I'll just give a quick rundown of what to expect in terms of the settings. So you'll need to set up an organization profile, right? So that'll be your address, right? Your primary email that you want to have things sending out from. You need to go through and set up all of your opening balances. Again, we'll dig in a little bit more there shortly. You'll have a section for managing users and roles, and you can get really granular about those roles. Like someone should be able to send an invoice but not delete it, but they shouldn't see anything about purchases, but they can see time tracking, right? So you can really get granular there with your roles. We have a general set of preferences. These kind of stretch anything from, do you want to charge for shipping on an invoice to, do you want to have, specific currency settings? Do you want to have, custom fields on any of your records, like your invoices or purchase orders? So really kind of the general preferences there. Of course, you'll need to set up different currencies or tax rates that you need to use. For taxes, we do recommend, setting up Avalara if you can. Definitely worth it. It's pretty much an industry standard tool that will just automate all of your tax management. Kind of helps out there. Under templates, you can customize your actual document templates, meaning, how does your estimate look? How does your invoice look? And then to customize any of the emails that actually go out along with those documents, you can drop into the emails tab. They also have a really easy to use auto reminder feature, right? So you can set up, 1 day after the due date, 3 days after the due date, and 1 week after, right? We send a little ping about an overdue invoice. As with, most Zoho applications, there's a full automation suite, so if you want to say, once an invoice is paid, I want to run a custom function, or I want to, send a webhook and do some type of integration task. There's kind of a whole automation suite here that's very powerful. Of course, we'll want to set up online payments. This is where you'd go to plug in your Stripe or your Square. And then there are some additional default integrations that kind of come out of the box here as well. If you have Finance Suite, these would be where you'd go to integrate any of your online stores or, shipment tracking software.
All right, so now we're going to get on to some best practices and use cases, kind of that you've got the lay of the land as it relates to Zoho Books. First thing we're going to get into is setting up bank accounts and credit cards. Zoho's really, really good about this. You basically go into the banking section and you're going to have a little button up in the, I'm going to go back here. You'll have this button up in the upper right-hand corner here, add bank or credit card. When you click on that, it's going to take you to a section where you basically can search for virtually any bank. These are global. This is a rather large list. For an example here, I typed in Citi, and so it's got Citibank, and there actually were probably 50 or 60 cities. And what you want to do to verify you've actually got the right one is when you click in to choose the bank you're going to want to associate or the credit card you're going to associate, they actually give you a URL, and you can click on that, log in to verify that it's actually the right place where you could normally log in, and that will allow you to log into your accounts. And once all you really do is put in your username, password, verify the password. Depending on the account you're logging into, it might ask for PIN. It might ask for two-factor authentication, and this handles all of that. So if you've got something going to your phone or whatever, it basically will say, hey, how do you want to receive your authentication? You want to do it by email to get a code? You want to come to your phone to get by code? You'll get that information, and you can go ahead and verify. And once you verified, it's going to pull out all of the accounts that are associated with that login. So it's oftentimes, say if you're at Citi, if you had logged in here and you had a bank account, you had a checking account, you had a savings account, you had a CD, you have a credit line, you've got all of the various credit cards, you can go ahead and add all of them in at once. So it makes it pretty simple to do that. You can also say, how far back do you want to go ahead and get your transaction history when you're setting this up? It will automatically go back 90 days. If you want to go back more than that, what you'll need to do is log into your bank and download all of the statements. Zoho makes it very, very easy to import all of those statements. So, and if you're going to do that, I recommend that you basically just do it from, the last date of your last statement, just do a small import from there. And then go ahead and grab all of your download all your transactions and go ahead and upload them. So, you can change it to say, you know what, I only want from September 1st forward. Choose your currency, select the accounts you actually want to go in. And now I will tell you, when you get this all said and done and you hit continue, it's going to look like there's nothing there. And it will take probably 10 to 15 minutes before it actually processes it, comes through, and all of a sudden your transactions come in. And so it will pull in the name of your credit card, give you all the basic information and all the transactions from that period of time. Now, you're going to want to go through and reconcile these, but oftentimes you're also going to want to set your opening balances before you do that, because you might not be going back to the beginning of time. So you can easily do that again over at the dashboard. Click on settings, and Tyler covered this. You kind of go into opening balances. And in here, and they've really changed this, which is great, because this used to be very confusing because you had to hit an edit button. There were all kinds of things you had to do. You now can just directly click into the section that you want to add balances to. So if I click into bank, you can see that the checking account is there. If I click into liabilities, you can see it pulled in the credit cards, and you can go ahead and set your opening balances. Um, Sometimes you'll want to do this after you've done a reconciliation. So kind of after you go through and you reconcile all of your accounts, you'll see that it's off a little bit. You can then go back and look and see what opening balances you need to go ahead and do to adjust it to make sure that you're perfectly in balance once you start going. So let's dive into reconciliation and transaction rules. I think this is the thing we get asked about the most. So I'll give you kind of a brief detail on how to do this. So I'm going to go ahead and go to this credit card. It's got 11 transactions, and they are uncategorized. You've got, once they get categorized, they move into the all transactions tab. But when they're uncategorized, they're just going to sit here. So I've got 3 at this Galaxy restaurant in Wadsworth, Ohio. And so there are 3 little transactions here. And I'm going to show you how these work with using transaction rules to make sure that you can just automate these after you get them done. So let's go ahead and we're going to click into this one, which is the first one on the list. And it's really not going to know anything about this because you're just starting off. It's going to guess that it's an expense because it's in the withdrawal column. And so you can go ahead and categorize it as an expense, but maybe it's a little different. Maybe you want to categorize it, maybe it's a credit card payment. That's different. Maybe it's a transfer. Maybe it's a drawing. Maybe it's a bill payment. You can just set it up exactly how you want to be. So the first time you're putting these in, it's important to make sure you categorize them correctly. So now you set it up as an expense. Now you have to choose an expense account for this. This is actually going to allow you to add into your chart of accounts. So this is looking into your chart of accounts and saying, okay, what do we have in the chart of accounts that actually can be a withdrawal? So you've got cost of goods sold, or you've got a variety of expenses that are associated with that. And you can also just do a search because there's hundreds of them. So meals and entertainment is a default one that Zoho gives you when you set it up. But maybe you decide that really isn't enough because you want to be able to categorize not just meals and entertainment, but you want to break them down by breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So if you type in lunch, that doesn't exist. There's literally no results found around that. So what you're going to have to do is go ahead and create a new account. And then this is going to take you into pretty much the exact same screen you'll see later on when we're in the chart of accounts. And it's going to allow you to determine, okay, what kind of account is this? Now, this is going to give you everything at this point in time. So is it a fixed asset? Is it a liability? Is it an expense? Since you know this is an expense, you're going to go ahead and just set it up directly as an expense. And then you have to give it a name. I'm going to call it lunch. And let's say we want to make this a sub account. So this is all going to roll up. So just check, make it a sub account, and then let's put it under meals and entertainment. So now lunch is going to show up under meals and entertainment. And then oftentimes a lot of people use general ledger codes. So maybe breakfast is 1500, lunch is 1501, and dinner is 1502. So you give it whatever code you want. And you can also make this, give it a description, and you can also have it active in Zoho Expenses. So if you do this now and your employees are using Zoho Expense, when they go to categorize a receipt, they'll have the option under meals and entertainment to categorize it as lunch. So really easy, really straightforward for them. And then you just save and select, and you're done. And now you can see that the expense account is there. And if you give it a GL code, that GL code is going to come in front of it as well. I'm not covering it, but you also can itemize these. So if maybe there were several different things that this is associated with, you can click itemize and you could add a whole bunch of different expense categories for this and then break down this amount. Once you've done that, you're going to go into the vendor. So who's this going to be? Well, you can usually see when you're looking at this in the description, it's the Galaxy restaurant. So I'm going to go to the Galaxy restaurant and go ahead and pop it in. Well, that no results were found when I typed that in. And so I've got to create a brand new vendor for this. Now, this can be really detailed. There's just so much you can do here across the board, from names to company names to vendor display, all of this. You literally don't have to put any of this in though. You can just click save. So if it's something like this, the McDonald's or something like this, you really don't care about who you're paying here. You don't care about the company. It's all going to the company name will automatically fill in from the vendor display. You can just go ahead and hit save and you're quickly on your way. But if you want to, you have the ability to kind of put in all this information. Is this someone I'm tracking 1099 payment for? Is it a vendor and I want to give them access to the portal? Do I have their social media platform? You also can drop in all of the addresses. Perhaps they've got a billing and a shipping address. You can actually manage additional direct addresses in the contact section. So you can kind of set this all up here. Custom fields. If you use Zoho CRM, maybe you've got a field that you want to do specifically. If you want to associate custom fields with this, you can go ahead and put those in. Reporting tags, we kind of skip that over the main menu. This is rather interesting. So maybe you want to get really granular, and for all you QuickBooks users, you have this ability to kind of put tags on various things and then you can report on them. Again, you can say what reporting tags are going to be associated with this vendor every single time I go forward. And then if you have any remarks, you can go ahead and put those in as well. Then you save and you're done. And now the Galaxy Restaurant Wadsworth is added in as a vendor. And at that point, all you have to do is save. And when you do save, you'll notice that over on the left-hand side, you've only got 2 of the galaxies left. The other one basically has been reconciled and moved over, but it's also going to give you an option to go ahead and create a rule around this. There's a lot you can do with this. You can, if you've got something that is based on a fixed amount, you can go ahead and you can do that. You can say, I want it to match all of this criteria. I just want to match it any of the one below. I find these work best if you really, really, really narrow them down. And it's usually based upon the payee, but that might not be the case. So it does give you the ability to kind of hone these down. So what I'll usually do is go ahead and say the amount doesn't matter. So I'm going to get rid of that. And then the description doesn't matter. So I'm going to get rid of that. All I really care about is the payee. If the payee is Galaxy Restaurant, then I want you to go ahead and apply all of the settings that I did in this transaction to that. You give the rule a name, you save the rule, and now you can see the transaction's been categorized, it's off to the side, and the rule has been set up as well. So now, if I click on the other Galaxy Restaurant here, you can see it's completely done. Up at the top here, it says transaction details are populated based upon the rule. Everything we set up is completely done. If you wanted to, maybe this was a dinner, you could then go ahead and change the lunch to a dinner. There's a variety of things you can do. You don't have to stay with the rule, but the rule is basically going to fill in most of the stuff that you want. And then you go ahead and save and move on. Also, if you make a mistake in a rule, you can easily click on settings. Inside, by the way, all of your transaction rules are associated only with the account you're in. So if you've got 5 credit cards, and I think this causes some people a little frustration, and they're out with your team and your team's got 5 cards and they go to McDonald's, you'll have to set up a McDonald's rule under all 5 of those credit cards. Little bit of a pain, but that's the way it's set up. So when you click into manage transaction rules, you then can go in, you can see the rule and you can go ahead and click on it and you can edit it. You can add criteria, you can change it, you can do whatever you want. So it's really, they're not locked in stone once you go ahead and you set those transaction rules. All right. With that, we'll hand it over to Tyler and he can talk about sales and purchasing.
Yeah, so here we'll kind of jump in back to the flow here from basically your invoice through from your estimate, through invoicing and out to your purchase order. So what we'll do first is go ahead and create an estimate, kind of highlight some of the things that we can set up here. So we can go next slide. So, first what we'll need to do is define the customer, right? So we're going to go ahead and send an invoice over to the example company here. It's going to automatically generate your estimate number. You can set up some specific rules around that as well if you have a prefix or suffix that you'd like to use. Then once we do that, we'll go ahead and set up the specific items and quantities that we want to, quote out for this person. So let's say we're working with a quote of 10 of our little widgets, and we're going to have a $50 shipping charge on top of that. We can basically load all of that here into the little items table in the estimate. And then once we go ahead and save and send that out, we'll basically have, our estimate loaded here. Now, we'll see here, this estimate is defined as accepted. This is how it looks once the customer actually receives that and confirms that it looks good on their end. That kind of gives us the key in to go ahead and move forward on processing the sale. So the first thing we'll do is actually convert it to a sales order. That kind of, again, will create the hub where, we'll house the invoice as well as the purchase order. Now, again, we can go directly to an invoice, but, for this purpose, we'll start here with sales order. Now, once we have that sales order, you can either save it as a draft or mark it as confirmed. Here, based on, some business rules, it's automatically confirmed once we convert from an estimate. Up here in the top right, we can convert to an invoice as well as a purchase order. It doesn't particularly matter which way you do this. You can start with a purchase order, then do your invoice, or, start with the invoice and move to the purchase order. We'll go ahead and create the invoice first here. And once we do that, we can basically create this and send it out. As long as you have your payment gateways integrated, you'll be able to actually receive digital payment for this, which will mark it paid once that's been submitted. Or, if you do get a check that comes through, you can always go ahead and just kind of manually record that you've received an offline payment, which will move it out of an open receivable and mark it paid. And then if we jump back to the sales order here, now we can do part 2, which is going to be actually converting this to a purchase order, which we'll send out to the vendor to actually order, additional stock of the product. So if we go ahead and convert this to a PO, it'll drop us off into that page. We'll see that now the, event, it's changed. Rather than being addressed to the customer, it's now addressed to the vendor that we have on file for this product. Once this is sent out, it'll mark itself as issued, meaning it's been issued over to the vendor. And, the last thing we would need to do here is, mark it as received and convert it to a bill. The bill basically just represents, payment for this purchase order, right? Kind of defining that we've paid this and that the purchase order is fully closed out. So kind of completes our loop here where, from that estimate, you can push through to a sales order and then branch both to receive your payment and, actually order and pay for the product to fulfill that order. So it's all kind of a little seamless flow. You kind of just go from one step to the next. Again, with the power of Zoho Books, you're able to automate a lot of these processes as well. So, maybe when an estimate is confirmed, we just automatically make that sales order, or every sales order automatically makes an invoice. So there's a lot you can layer on top of this, but that's kind of the general flow for both closing your sale as well as making your purchases through Zoho Books.
And one of the advantages we actually haven't covered is that Tyler talked briefly about user roles, how you can kind of lock things down so people can only do certain things, but you also have this full integration back to the CRM. So you can actually lock out books. So really people can do everything in the CRM. So they're inside a customer, they can create the estimate, they can create the invoice. All of those things can be done directly in the CRM without ever having to log into books. In essence, they are in books. It's just kind of shelled in. They don't know it. They're actually creating the invoice in books. They're creating the estimate in books. It really makes it seamless for salespeople. They also then can go look and see if it's been paid, what the status is, all of those kind of things without ever going into Zoho Books. They can just see it directly inside of CRM. All right, now we're going to move on to the chart of accounts. This is kind of the next step in what we talked about before. You really want to kind of keep this clean and you want to get it set up properly when you're setting up books. So we talked a little bit about this on this transaction under, meals. Let's go ahead and set up lunch. So let's talk about what that would look like. So if you click on the accountant, you've got a lot of things you can do here. You've got journal entries. Oftentimes people use for payroll. You can do bulk updates, currency adjustments, budget. You can set everything you need, but we're going to focus here on chart of accounts. And when you go in, you're really going to have a list of every single account you've got. And there's all base ones plus all of the new ones that are created when you go ahead and you add in some new credit cards or banks. And as you can see down here, we have our meals and entertainment. And under that, we have the subcategory of lunch. So let's talk about maybe we wanted to do dinner like we talked about earlier. So to do that, you're just going to go up and click on new account. And then we're going to go down. And now that you're creating an account from scratch, you get a lot more to work from than you do when you're inside the transaction. So you can set up assets, you can set up liabilities and equity, you can set up income, you can set up expenses. Of course, we're going to focus on an expense. So just to fill this all out like we did before, it's an expense. This time we're going to make it dinner, and we're going to make it a sub account of meals and entertainment. We're going to go ahead and give it a GL of 1502. It's dinner expenses, and we're going to add it to Zoho expense. Interestingly, there is one other checkbox here, which is add to the watch list on my dashboard. So on the dashboard, you can actually create watch lists of various accounts that you want to keep track of. Maybe it's a credit card, maybe it's an expense category. You're trying to make sure it doesn't go over a certain amount. You don't have that ability to add to the watch list on your dashboard when you're creating it from the transaction register, but you always can go back in and edit it to do that. So you've got that. Go ahead and add it to your watch list on your dashboard. And now, as you can see under the chart of expenses, we now have under meals and entertainment, lunch and dinner. And if we go and we look at our account watch list, you've got dinner and lunch, so you can see what your employees are spending on dinner and lunch if that's what you're looking to do. And that pretty much is setting up your chart of accounts. There's a lot to it when you look at that overall list. A lot of people will want to, delete half of them. There are only some of them you can't delete. A good chunk you can delete. You can just kind of give them GL numbers that move them to the bottom of the page, but you can create basically from scratch. You can kind of recreate your entire chart of accounts. If you're using QuickBooks, you can export that chart of accounts and import that chart of accounts. It works relatively easily. All right, now we'll talk about integrations and online payments. Tyler touched on this briefly, but up under the settings tab, you've got all of the online payments and all of the integrations that go with them. Zoho supports a lot of online payments. Stripe is their preferred gateway. It happens to be one we use. It works really, really, really well. Completely simple to set up, very much automated. It comes in, it actually creates a Stripe holding account inside of your banking section. And in there, all of the accounts are automatically then transferred to your preferred checking account. It's kind of an automatic reconciliation. It automatically marks your invoices as paid inside of books. All of these do that, by the way. All of them integrate very, very nicely. If you have cut a deal with a credit card processor, and a lot of you have, especially if you're doing huge volumes of business, you're not going to pay that flat rate of say 2.9% since 30 cents plus 30 cents a transaction. You can actually do deep negotiations where on debit cards, we're paying half a point. On American Express, it's costing us 4. On these kind of cards, it's costing this, where you've got this long thing. You can pretty much hook up any single credit card processor through authorize.net and then go ahead and have that completely integrated into the CRM as well, or into Zoho Books as well. It also supports Braintree, to Checkout, WorldPay, and Forte. And Forte is kind of interesting because you can not only have customer payments, but then your outgoing vendor payments can be managed by Forte as well. So easy to set those up. Once they're integrated, it's automatically going to create the account, and it's going to set it up for you. It's going to create your holding account. It's automatically going to transfer those to whatever checking account they're supposed to go to as they clear. It really is a seamless way to work with your online payments. And then lastly are integrations. And this is just a huge one. SMS, if you'd like to send out notifications on invoices and payments by SMS, it's got a pretty easy Twilio integration. So maybe every 5 days or whatever it is, you can set that up and send a reminder that an invoice is late or a payment's late. Zoho Apps supports quite a few. CRM is a great one. Projects can pull in billing information. Zoho People, that's if you want to do things like time tracking and that. Zoho Sign, so you can actually have some of your estimates signed if you want those to be signed and approved. Zoho Subscriptions, that's kind of a must with Zoho Books. So if you are using Zoho Subscriptions, it's seamless. All of your vendors, all of your customers, they're completely linked over into Zoho Subscriptions. When a payment comes in, it goes into Books. It's very, very seamless integration. Same thing with Zoho Inventory. You kind of saw that earlier. When you set up your items, you can set them up in inventory as well. It decrements them for you. And basically all of your items and products are all synchronized between CRM, inventory, and Zoho Books. Expense, we talked about that earlier. So if you wanted to go ahead, you saw as you set up various accounts, you want those to be expensible. You want your employees to basically submit their expenses through Zoho Books. You can do that. The mobile application is great, allows you to scan receipts and easily submit your expenses. Tyler touched on this. Zoho Analytics is huge. The reporting in Zoho Books is fine. It's rather minimal though. And in a lot of cases, we've had customers, they want much, much, much deeper reporting. And it's easy to do that in Zoho Analytics. So you basically can pull all of this data in analytics and slice it and dice it however you would like. And then Zoho Cliq, which just gets more and more and more features to it. You can have notifications around payments and all sorts of things come into your Zoho Cliq channel, whatever channel you'd like it to. So people actually don't even have to look at books. They don't have to look at CRM. You can just have a notification go straight into Cliq around anything that happens inside of books. And then you've got Desk. You can have tickets and desk that tie into us. So all of your clients in here, or all of your customers inside of books will sync with desk. Zoho Mail, easy integration for sending that out right from books account. And then Zoho Campaigns. This is an integration you want to do over from Zoho Campaigns to books. Basically, again, pulling in all of your customer information. A lot of these integrations for people that don't have CRM. If you have Zoho CRM, you're really going to want to make the connection to a lot of these things directly from CRM. You're probably not going to want to do it from books, but there are people that just have books. They want to be able to do mailings to their customers, so they might want to use Zoho Campaigns and have that direct connection. 1099 filings. This is kind of a big one. So if you have, you might have noticed when we were setting up accounts, you can basically, when you're setting up a customer or you're setting up a vendor, you can say on that vendor, this is a person that's 1099. So every payment you make to them, you're going to send them a 1099 at the end of the year. These two services integrate and you will automatically send out those 1099s for you or do the filings for you as well. A whole bunch of other apps on here. So that what we talked about, Cliq, you can have that same integration with Slack. Square POS, this allows you, if you've got a Square POS system, you can actually track all of your inventory and your sales in Square POS directly into the books. This is relatively new and kind of a really nice integration. Avalara, Tyler touched on this one. It's the big one. Really, what this does is it goes ahead and it looks at the city and the state and the county and all of that, wherever you're doing a sale, and calculates the tax for that specific zip code. And again, when you set up with them, they'll do all of the tax filings, the withholding, all of those kind of things as well. And then on and on down the line. I don't have to go through all of these, but you get the idea. There are quite a lot of integrations. The last one you'll see on the integrations is the Z key. I blacked this out. But oftentimes there are certain services that you're going to need this. And well, all it is who's the email address, who's the owner of Zoho Books, and it's going to give you a long multi-digit key that you will need to copy and paste. And sometimes you need to make the connection that way. And this is where you will find that ZSC key. Oftentimes we get asked this, it needs a key. Where do you find it? It's kind of hidden under integrations over here. Actually, some announcements before we move into the Q&A part of this. If you don't know, we do a thing called the CRM Zen Show. It is a podcast that you can find on Google Play, Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts. You can also subscribe to it on YouTube. Every week, we cover everything new that happens in Zoho. And it's a lot with almost 50 applications. It takes us a while to go through all that. So if you've never listened to the show, take a listen. We think you might like it. We also broadcast that show live at 9:30 a.m. Pacific time on Fridays. That varied over the last 2 weeks. I was traveling a bit, but we try to stick to that time frame. It's just a standard webinar link. Once you sign up for it once, you never have to sign up for it again. It's just this recurring webinar. And we're just going to go through and talk about what happened last week in Zoho. Our next webinar is going to be on Zoho Sales IQ. You'll be able to register for that probably sometime later this afternoon on Zenatta.com. It'll be right on the homepage. And we're really going to take you through all of Sales IQ, and it's a monster. So I don't know how we're going to fit that into an hour. And if you want to get any of this information, and if you don't subscribe to our newsletter, go to Zenatta.com/newsletter, and you'll never miss out on a thing. And with that, let's go to our Q&A, Tyler. What do we got?
Let's see. So we've got one here about bank account setups and migration dates. Maybe you want to take that one?
Yeah. So here's what I recommend, Denise. If you really look at this, I would do your migration now. and start working inside of Zoho Books. So if you're basically going to start from scratch on a migration date, then you've got a choice here. Oftentimes companies say, you know what, we want to start on 10/1, and um, or you're saying January 1. I want to start on January 1. Now, do you want to start clean on January 1, or do you want to actually import everything ahead of time? If you're going to do a migration, then I think you do the migration now. You get all of the bank synchronization set up, and you're basically running 2 sets of books for the next 60 days, and you're making sure that everything is perfect. You've got them balanced and they match. That's really the best way to do it, because you can have you can be synchronizing to QuickBooks and go ahead and synchronizing to Zoho Books, and then you've got them all online. If you try to do it all on January 1, it's just going to be pain and suffering, wailing and gnashing of teeth. So I'd recommend starting now, because there's a lot to it. All right.
We've got one more question here around invoicing through books that came through password protected. It could be, I know when you send that invoice payment link, it does pull them up in a page where they're kind of in their portal, but they shouldn't need to log in to actually make a payment on that invoice. I do know it does have that little sign in section when you actually click the invoice link, but they should be able to make payments against that without a password, right?
Yeah, they should. And I think it's kind of an interesting question. So this is like one client out of all of them, because this would be a setting, and it's not a setting I've ever seen before. So I wish I knew where that came from. If you want, I'd love to jump on go to zenatta.com/Brett. Just show it to me. I'd love to see what that is. Maybe we can figure it out for you on the back end. If you do that, you could book like a little 15-minute appointment with me, and we can take a look and see what we've got there. And Chris Webb, you're asking how to know where to start a transaction, CRM versus books. I personally think it's much easier to start, especially if I think we're talking estimates here and invoicing. We prefer to start it in the CRM. We also prefer to associate it with an opportunity. So if if you're set up that way where you've got deals, so in the deal, you're going to have the contact account. And if you initiate it directly from that opportunity, it'll automatically be associated with all 3 of those inside books. The direct association is going to be with that deal, and it makes it really, really easy to kind of go in and see where everything is. It'll also all roll up under the account that way as well. So you can kind of, most of the time your salespeople are going to be looking inside the opportunity. It's gone to awaiting payment, or it's gone to close one, and from there it does that. All right, that's it. Hey everybody, we want to thank you so much for coming by and listening to our webinar today. We kind of touched briefly earlier all of the things going on. It's easy to get a hold of us. Here's all of our contact information. Again, thanks for stopping by, and we will see you just before Thanksgiving. Thanks again, everyone.
Thank you.